So welcome back to another ranking video for Star Wars Hunters, boys and girls. If you guys didn't see, last week I did the Season 3 ranking for the Hunters, and I thought I would follow up with a map ranking because I actually haven't done one of these yet. I was going to do one when the game first launched, but obviously there was only about 6 maps in the game, so it was kind of hard to rank it. But now we've got 3 more throughout the global launch of the game in Vespara Row, Vader's Castle, and now the Hoth Frontlines as well. And so I thought I would do a bit of a map ranking for you guys, ranking all 9 maps in Star Wars Hunters. Now, obviously, I'm not going to include the Hutt Ball maps and stuff like that. Technically speaking, there are more than 9 maps in the game, but they're not all available at all times. And so until Hutt Ball and the likes of Escort, for example, get added, we are just going to stick to these, but I'll definitely update this in the future once those hopefully get added to the game permanently, because at the moment they're kind of just a limited time mode. So without wasting any time, we are going to jump right into it. And I've kind of just got them in the order of, like, you know, most of the launch maps here, and then some of the soft launch ones, as well as the post-launch maps. And so I'm pretty much just going to go in that order. So first up, we've got Mos Espa Pod Race. It is kind of hard to see with how little these are on my monitor at the moment, but this one's a pretty damn good map. I'm not too sure where to rank it because it's, I don't know, this is a bit harder than ranking the Hunters, simply because you kind of know how good or bad they are straight away. You know if they're going to be meta tier or not. It's a bit harder with the map. So I think for now, I'm going to put it B tier. It is a really good map, and I like, obviously, the pod races coming through the middle. That adds a different dynamic to it. So it's probably going to end up here, but I think just to start, actually, you know what? It's probably going to end up here. But just to start, I'll leave it in B, just to sort of gauge, I guess, where the rest of them are going to be. Now, following that, we have got the Dune Sea Outpost, which to me is probably like the most iconic map in this game, just because it's kind of the one that seemed to be the most popular during the soft launch, and at least my first like 3 or 4 matches in this game, I think all of them were on Dune Sea Outpost, so it's kind of the one that I always think back of as like the classic original map, even though it has actually changed a little bit since the game launched, because it was, for those who didn't know, it was actually slightly different. It's not too different, but there's just a few little changes to the layout of that map. So for this one, it's tough. I think just for how iconic it is, and it is pretty chaotic, especially depending on the mode anyway, it can be kind of chaotic in the middle there. So I think I'm going to put that in A tier. I don't think it's crazy better than the pod race map, but it's just iconic. It's kind of just the map that I think of straight away, I think, when it comes to this game. And so yeah, I think I'm going to put that in A tier. Now, next up, we've got Ewok Village, which is also another iconic map, and it's realistically probably one of the more unique maps in the game, just the way that it's laid out. A little bit more verticality, and it's a little bit more colorful as well than some of the other maps. I think this one also goes A tier, but it probably just goes behind Dune Sea Outpost. But it is a really good map, and again, these two are probably the 2 maps that I think of when I think of this game. I'm pretty sure when it launched, and I could be wrong, please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure these were the only 3 maps in the game. And then I'm fairly sure since then they've added these 3 in the soft launch, and then obviously these 3 post launch. So I'm pretty sure these were the only 3. That kind of feels wrong now that I think of it. I feel like there was more than that at launch, but I'm pretty sure that is actually the original 3 maps, the only 3 that were in the game, at least in terms of the regular modes anyway, as there was obviously Escort and eventually a Hutt Ball added to the game as well. But in terms of the smaller maps, the arena type maps, then yeah, these are the classics, and I think that's, yeah, I think I feel pretty comfortable with how they're laid out. Now, next up, we have got Mos Espa Way Station, and this one's hard. I'm not too sure. You know what? I think this is going to go there, and I think this goes in the B tier, but it's at the top of the B tier. I really like this map, and especially the middle section when you're fighting over like the B flag in power control and stuff. It's a really fun map. It is a little bit big sometimes, and depending on the hunter you're playing, if you're playing as like Slingshot or Scorer, it doesn't really matter because they're so quick. And in actual fact, those 2 actually have a big advantage. So as a big fan of playing Slingshot, realistically, when I play Slingshot, this is probably one of my better maps just because the mobility really stands out. But for every other hunter, it can be a little bit annoying with how big they are. And yeah, if your teammates all die, it feels like the enemy team can kind of get a grasp of the whole map, and then you can't really do much about it, especially too in Trophy Chase. It feels like he kind of just spawned pretty far away a lot of the time. So it is a good map. I think it's just a little bit too big, which is kind of crazy because when you actually think about this map compared to, like, you know, Call of Duty maps and stuff, it is tiny. Like, it's a tiny map, and yet I think it's the biggest in this game. And, or I guess maybe these two are equal to the size of it. But yeah, sometimes it just feels a little bit too big, probably just because of all the kind of obstacles in the way. But it's still a good map, so I think it still belongs in the B tier. Now, next up, we've got Death Star Crossfire, and this is a very, very good map. I am a big fan of this, and it's probably, I guess it's a more notable addition than the Way Station. I feel like this was added a fair while back. I can't really remember. It's been that freaking long since they've launched, but it feels a bit more recent. I think this was only like, I want to say within the last 6 months before launch. I could be wrong on that though, but this one's tough. I think this goes somewhere here. I'm not too sure if it's better than Ewok Village. I'm trying to think of like every game mode. I think it is, but just slightly. I think it's not much between these two, but yeah, I think just the fact that it's the Death Star, like it's such a cool location. So I think that goes there. Big fan of Ewok Village, but it's probably just edged out by the Death Star. Now, next up, we've got the Vandor Rail Yard, and it's really weird because looking at this now, this will probably be one of the lower maps in the game, but I really like it. It goes below all of these for me, mostly just because the actual rail section, even though it's cool, I like it with the pod race map as well. I like that it's a bit dynamic, but it's kind of annoying sometimes because it can really like affect the gameplay sometimes, especially when there's an objective over there and there's like a Groz or someone with a knockback ability and they just knock you into it. And even if the train isn't there, they just knock you off the edge. I find it to just be a little bit too glaring. And say on dynamic control, there's 3 objectives that can take place on that part of the map. So you could technically have, they're in a set order, but like there are multiple in a row that are pretty close to each other. And if you're fighting a team who have multiple knockback abilities, you can just get knocked off too many times. And so I do really like it, and I think for certain modes it's really fun. But yeah, it is probably the worst of these maps, which again, it's not that big of a difference. It's really not that different than Dune Sea in terms of how much I enjoy the maps, but I think, yeah, I think I've got to put it in the B tier at the bottom of these maps so far. Now, next up, we have got Vespara Row, and after all that talking I did about Vandor being last, this one for me is dead last. I don't dislike the map, but, and you know what, it actually nearly goes, yeah, I think it goes in the C tier just because I really like all of these, even though I just kind of said my issues with Vandor. I still really like it. When it comes up, I'm kind of like, all right, this is a good map. When Vespara comes up, I kind of find myself going, this is, I don't know, this map's kind of annoying. It just feels a little bit too close quarters, and it feels as though if one team sticks together, it's just impossible regardless of the mode. I know that's the case with most maps, but say with like Dune Sea Outpost, it does feel like if I want to attack this center objective by myself and there's 2 or 3 enemies on it, depending on the hunter that I'm playing, I can maybe not kill them all, but I can actually really impact that. Whereas this is such a close quarters map that like if they've just got one hunter who's good at close range, it just feels impossible to do anything unless you're with teammates. So I don't hate it, but I also don't love it. It's probably the only map in the game that comes up and I'm a bit like, not that keen to play on this map. And also sometimes it can be a little bit spammy too. So yeah, for me, that is the worst map in the game. Again, not a bad one, but definitely deserves to be at the bottom for me. Now that brings us to our final 2 maps that we've gotten in Season 2 and Season 3, that being Vader's Castle and Hoth Frontlines. Now, I'm going to be straight up honest with you. Both of these are going in the S tier. I'm not too sure on the order. I think Vader's Castle still, I don't know, it's very close. I think that one still holds number 1, but I'm actually, now that I think of it, I'm not too sure. Actually, there's a bit of recency bias here, if I'm honest, that might put that there. And what I said about Vandor, actually, yeah, what I said about Vandor, I can't then neglect that for Vader's Castle. So you can get knocked off a few times. Now that's part of the fun of this map, and it's kind of a bit different to Vandor because that's the edge of the map. This is like in borderline the center of the map. There's like the, you know, the catwalk area. The difference is that you know that when you're out there, you know as soon as you walk out onto the catwalks, you're in danger. Whereas Vandor, it shouldn't really be like that because you're on like solid ground, and even if you're not that close to the train, for example, you can still get knocked off the edge. So I can't really ignore that, but I think that knocks it down to 2nd place. I'm a big fan of Hoth Frontlines. I think it not only looks really cool, but it just plays really well. It's got good verticality to it and stuff like that. That's really the only other knock here, is that the verticality isn't, I mean, there really borderline isn't any verticality on this map other than, you know, falling to your death. But in terms of, you know, you can jump down a level and stuff like you can on Hoth, you can't really do that. So I think Hoth comes in at number 1, though Vader's Castle is definitely very close. And now that I'm looking at this too, I think I'm going to put this in S tier. I actually think this map is just so iconic, and it feels like a really well designed map in the fact that it all does flow to the center. So for a lot of modes that works really well, but there's also, you know, flanks on sort of either side. It feels like a very well thought out, typical arcadey type of map, whereas some of the other ones are a little bit more chaotic, I guess. So I think I'm going to put that in the S tier. It's not a crazy amount better than these ones, but yeah, I feel like it does belong in there. When I think of the maps in this game, like I said, that's probably the first map that I kind of think of. So that right there is my final rankings for the maps in Star Wars Hunters. To be fair, it probably chops and changes a little bit. If I have like a bunch of good games on one of these maps, they probably go up a tier, to be honest, but I think I feel pretty comfortable with that. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts though, so be sure to leave them down in the comment section. Like I said, be sure to go and check out the previous ranking as well, because I ranked all the hunters, and that's a little bit more useful for, you know, knowing which hunters are good to play, whereas this is realistically just personal preference. There is objectively no best or worst map in the game. But like I said, I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts as well. And once we do hopefully get Huttball and Escort added permanently, whenever the hell that is going to be, I will obviously update this and either do them on their own, or I'll sort of throw them all in there. It's kind of hard with like Huttball because those maps are very different, but like I said, I will update that in the future. But that is going to do it for this one, boys and girls. Thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.